Dark fantasy, a literary subgenre that incorporates horror, suspense, disturbing and frightening themes, and of course, fantasy. It's a genre full of secondary worlds, supernatural forces, brooding super beings with gothic imagery, and terrifying endings at times. It first gained fandom in the middle of the 20th century and has continued to gain in popularity through artists like Stephen King, for example, has hopped onto the mainstream in movies such as Pan's Labyrinth, and has spread into other media such as television, video games, comics, music, and anime. But who helped create this genre? Who is the author who is now lost in time, who developed the grim side of the coin that is our imagination? Why do we not read more about this author? Today we will be discussing Gertrude Barrows Bennett, who is known as, quote, the woman who invented dark fantasy, unquote. Hello, and welcome back to the library. And before we get lost amongst the stacks, I want to introduce my guest today, the book Mac Daddy himself, Noah MacGillivray. Welcome back to the podcast, Noah.
Back at it again.
I will say, the last time you were on it, when I showed you the people the podcast, they said that you had a nice voice for this. So, and
good to know.
Arthur Rimbaud is one of our more famous, more popular people that we've talked about. I think it's because people like Arthur Rimbaud, but I mean, it's getting hits, so let's do it.
Sure.
This person's very obscure. It's not an Arthur Rimbaud type. So when I began researching this, it was a totally different person I was researching, and I stumbled upon this topic. Frankly, I could not justify doing the other topic until we discussed Gertrude here. And Gertrude, one of those names that you just don't get anymore, right? Jeez, yeah. It's like Beatrice or Bertha, right?
Yeah, don't hear it too often, but it's a name for sure.
It's one of those things that are called names. Candidly, I wanted to say, of all people that we've ever covered and of all the books we ever talked about, this is going to be the script where the facts are really particularly difficult to verify due to that not just being like a ton of first-hand information out there about the author, for she really wasn't well known during her time, and things were just not stored for her at all. Nor was there a ton of written or found information about her life after she passed away, which, again, wasn't known at the time either. All her works also occurred in like a 4-year span, and there are several other factors that we will discuss why we have to basically rely on sources that aren't the most credible in the world for her story. But after all, this is a person who is credited for creating dark fantasy, so I think it's okay to use our imaginations a little here, right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
You've probably seen some dark fantasy. You definitely have. Have you seen Love, Death, and Robots? That's like dark sci-fi fantasy mixture. It's like on Netflix. I was just thinking that's a good one. Yeah.
I think so.
Really short, individual bits of episodes, right?
Yeah.
I think you'd love it. It's interesting. It's more sci-fi than fantasy, but there's definitely fantasy involved. And obviously the concept of Cthulhu and the dark worlds and stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah. Cthulhu.
Yeah. You know that. You've seen enough South Park to know that.
Actually, no, I haven't seen like much South Park, but I know that God. Right? God? Cthulhu?
Yeah, he's the Dark Lord, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll be talking about the guy who created them very, very, very briefly towards the end of this, but yeah. Cool. So with all that said, I am going to acknowledge our main source right up front. It's a blog called The Teller of Weird Tales by Terrence E. Hanley. He wrote a 7-parter on Gertrude's life, and most of this info that I am going to follow comes from him. I'll also reference a few of the other authors' stories and call them out by name, I guess, at times. But lastly, I'll also point out when I had to fill in some gaps using other sources that are disputed. I tried to use Wikipedia, but it was so honestly, it's such a far-fetched tale, and so many facts are like completely eschew that I couldn't even use Wikipedia to help with this much at all, which is crazy.
Not much on this lady. Not much on this Gertrude.
No, but
she existed.
She existed. There's definitely fact to that. So there are many reasons, like I said, but here's an introduction to Gertrude's life. So let's chat about her. Gertrude M. Barrows was born on September 18th, 1883, probably. Some sources give her birth as 1884. Okay. But for our sake, we'll stick to 1883, even though even Wikipedia says it was the year after. And they use the Social Security Index as a source, even though Social Security wasn't established until after like the act was established in 1935. So right away, not a credible source. We really can't be using Social Security. The earliest paper trail we have for her existence was the Minnesota State Census, dated in May 1st, 1885. And she was listed as 1 year old in that census, so that's why 1883 would make more sense. The person who was actually looking at the census itself said that if you were younger than 1 year old, they would basically write the month and then a slash and then 12 to indicate how old you are. So if you were 3 months old, it'd be 3/12, and this one they just indicated she was 1. That's really the only thing that we have going for her.
Huh.
And honestly, like, there's also a lot of reasons why people would either give false information to the census or lie straight up to it. And there are plenty of reasons why recorders would give inaccurate information back in 1885, for God's sakes, right? Right. So
Yeah.
not a lot of things that we can count as trustworthy. The M in Gertrude Barrows might be Mabel. It also might be Myrtle. So two basic facts. Their name and their birthday, already difficult to pin down.
Wow.
I know, it's good for a secret agent, but really not good for discussing an author's biography.
No. What the heck?
The third fact says that the census says that her family was living in Villard, Pope County, Minnesota by the time she was born. And Villard to this day is a fucking tiny town that has roughly about the same population as it did 130 years ago. It goes between 200 to 250 people in total, and known for the couple of lakes that are out there.
Teeny tiny.
Yeah, right?
I think my graduating class was like, I don't know, 600 kids.
Yeah. I mean, and that's out of Essex, Vermont, right? So,
Yeah.
like, I mean, my graduating class was about 2,000. No, that's not true. I can't remember what it was. I think it was like 400, but still, that's double what the
Right.
population is today.
Of the whole town, yeah.
Yeah. Some sources state that she was also born in Minneapolis. That probably isn't true, though. I'm going to say that she was born 1883 in Villard from here on in, just to keep that narrative going. Speaking of which, the blogger biographer where I'm taking a lot of this from, Terrence E. Hanley, states that Barrows is descended from very old American stock. Sure, why not? Right? She could be. How could I discredit that? She was the youngest of 3 children, her 2 older siblings, both being boys. Put a note on them. Her father was Charles A. Barrows, who was the son of a Michigan farmer and a veteran of the Civil War. And this we know that he was a veteran because he was served for basically the entirety of the war from August 21st, 1861 to September 1st, 1864, only missing like the last year of the war in 1865. So this guy is a Union hero for all intents and purposes. Barrows, the father, served in the 33rd Illinois Infantry, which means he at one point had to move to Illinois. Then he also purportedly served in Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, and fought in the Battle of Vicksburg for sure, which again means just by deduction that he served under General Ulysses S. Grant, fighting in the War of the West, because Grant commanded the battle in Vicksburg, and I believe it was Mississippi, Vicksburg, yeah. The year the war ended, and that also makes sense, just side note, why he would end in 1864, because he probably would have to re-enlist again, because the war in the West went so well, they basically won that war. Then General Grant was reassigned up towards Virginia over again, but they had different troops coming. Whatever, I digress. The year that the war ended, he married Caroline Pearson Hatch, who is Gertrude's mother. Any questions so far?
No. Good backstory on her dad. Good fighter. Good military man, it seems like.
I mean, you know, even back then, like, he didn't have to serve all 4 years. That's kind of interesting that he did.
Probably liked it.
I mean, yeah, he seemed to be, like, pretty good at it because he survived.
Yeah,
Civil
that's
War
a good
was
indicator.
No
No, absolutely not.
So the year that the war ended, Charles probably became a life insurance agent. So he would also travel door to door selling life insurance and then other stuff. At one point, he became a banker and other things. It's kind of hard to figure out. He probably died in 1892 after being admitted to the Pacific branch of the National Home for Disabled Volunteered Soldiers, moving to California after being diagnosed with chronic pulmonary disease just like something with your. It's an old-timey lung disease. You could still get chronic pulmonary disease, but it's probably something else. But he was definitely given the old-timey medicine of moving somewhere where the weather was better, right?
Yeah.
Back then, you would just move to the Southwest. Probably, right? Like, and we don't know because some sources claim that he lived until 1916 or 1917, though I don't think that was true because none of these sources could really prove that like he was there, and they have paper trails about him going to California. I mention his death mostly because he isn't the only man in this family to move away towards California and die after leaving his family behind because, as it turns out, Gertrude's maternal grandfather, a man named Charles Hatch, basically did the same. Charles Hatch ended up marrying Clymena, which is, what a name, Clymena.
Yeah, never even heard of that one before.
I know, it sounds very gross, honestly.
Oh. I was going to say unique, but gross works.
Well, no, sorry, I wouldn't say gross. It sounds like a
Yeah,
woman's
it's
reproductive part.
All right, now that you say that, it kind of does.
Yeah. Actually, it's not even a reproductive part. The clitoris is the only part of all human anatomy that is solely a sexual organ. Did you know that?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it's only used for pleasure.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good for them. But clitoris Rebecca Pearson, who was actually his stepsister. Yeah. So get this. Charles and Clymena were step siblings. And they
Oh my
lived
gosh.
I know, right?
Wow.
I know.
Okay.
That is
Plot thickens.
That is a fucking whole category on Pornhub. They lived in Oneida County at the time of their marriage, which is Oneida, New York, not far from where we're at, which means that they might have been involved with the Oneida community. Again, that makes sense why now the step-sibling thing is a thing. I touched upon the Oneida school up there when I did the Carl Sandburg episode a few weeks ago, but the Oneida community is an interesting part of American history that should be taught more because it was an early predecessor of like what would be considered extreme abolition movements in this country. Very cool, and also weird religious cult shit. They had a few children, of whom one of the few children was Caroline Pearson, eventually Barrows, who would be Gertrude's mother. So, any questions right now, right? Like, we've talked about clitoris. We've talked about...
Yes.
Okay.
We've talked about...
Charles Hatch.
Yes. Her grandfather.
Yeah.
And clitoris, her grandmother.
Yes. Jeez. Okay. So Charles, married to the clitoris, unfortunately, he separated eventually from that. Because in 1850... The late Charles Hatch decided he wanted to look for gold in California during the Californian Gold Rush.
That checks out.
He was a newcomer to the game, too, because we don't call them the San Francisco 50ers. We call them the 49ers, right?
Yes.
Unfortunately, he didn't make it. He died en route in Wyoming somewhere, possibly of mountain fever, which is a way too fun of a name for a deadly disease, right? I died of mountain fever. Honestly, that sounds like if I have mountain fever, I want to drink moonshine and smoke a ton of fucking really, really, like, seedy and stemmy weed.
Yeah. Kind of get a headache from the weed, but then moonshine clears it right up.
Exactly.
In the misty mountains.
Now, not much is known about Gertrude's young life, surprisingly, right? Our main protagonist. What is known is she had completed up to the 8th grade, most likely, and wanted to be an illustrator and attended nights classes for what ended up being a fruitless ambition. Again, probably. What is definitely known is that her family life was full of tragedy. Remember those two older brothers we mentioned, right? Like, because we're going to have to talk about them. Because all the men, except for the last one we're going to talk about, have very tragic lives. Not sad, some of them, tragic. All right?
Okay.
Her oldest brother was born in 1873 in Minneapolis. This one we can probably say for sure. His name was either Clark with an E, Clark without the E, which is like cute without the E, but opposite, because Sundays were not taken at that point, and we have to give them back now, right? Clark was smart enough. Yeah, you got that joke right away.
Sure.
Sure. You're a Taking Back Sunday guy, it seems like, right?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Clark was smart enough to attend the University of Minnesota starting in 1894 when he was 21 years old. And this also makes me believe that like his father left them at a younger age, because I presume he started later because he was the oldest sibling in the family and a man and needed to supply for his family when his father fucked off to Southern California to get sick and die. Clark studied either biology or zoology and became an assistant in Minnesota State Zoological Survey. However, he also got sick, and after a few months, he succumbed to tuberculosis that was ravaging his lungs in 1899. Right? Like, so his father...
These guys have bad lungs.
I know, right?
They got bad respiratory systems.
I mean, the chronic pulmonary disease probably was because, and I'm just speculating here, all the gunpowder he had to breathe in during the fucking Civil War and all the shit you breathe in when you're in war. This guy just died of tuberculosis. Like, that's just the luck of the draw in 1894, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Or 1899. He was only 25 years old. So it goes. Well, wait till you hear about the middle child. Because Clark even outlives his brother by a few years. His younger brother and Gertrude's older brother, the middle guy, had a different ending. Reginald, or Reggie, Barrows was born in 1880. Reggie boy. And I am going to just directly quote from who we're using as the main source here, Terrence, because he put it succinctly. Quote, he was, in one way or another, mentally ill or mentally disturbed. On December 22nd, 1896, he checked into a hotel in Minneapolis and stayed for a day or more, taking meals in his room. When questioned by the hotel clerk, Barrows said he did not have any money to pay for his stay. He fled from the hotel and was followed by the bellboy, then by a gathering crowd. Side note, people had nothing to fucking do back then. Like,
hey, you didn't pay your tab. You got to pay this.
I know, right?
No. Hey, can you believe this guy? Yeah, let's follow him.
Yeah, he didn't pay his tab. We got to make sure he pays his tab.
Oh, man.
Nowadays, nobody would they would help him escape.
Yes. Or if you're unliked in the community, they just one simple call, maybe a couple calls, but somebody...
Yeah, this predates the cell phone too, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the regular phone, what am I saying? At least standard phone.
So different now.
Yeah.
You don't even have angry mobs anymore.
No, well no.
Not like that.
Not like that. We definitely have angry mobs.
We definitely have angry mobs.
Yeah. January 6th. Fuck that up. So going back to the quote, Barrows produced a pistol and fired at the crowd. He entered a ramshackle vacant house and refused to come out. Shortly afterwards, Barrows shot himself. Even before being informed of his death by reporters, his mother, during when that was happening, being the reported, she told them, quote, nothing you could tell me about him would surprise me. Why, I am prepared for everything. It would not surprise me if he was lying dead at my feet. Undouble quote. So, definitely some undiagnosed mental illness going back.
Yeah.
It's a crazy way to go at 16. Sad. It's sad. Men's Mental Health Month was last month.
Yes.
We're a little late, but yeah.
They probably didn't even know what mental health was.
Oh, absolutely not. Used to be sent to the loony bin for masturbating too much, so... Well,
I would have been there.
By the time the new century rolled in, the only Barrows left were Gertrude and her mother, Caroline. They had moved to Minneapolis, that we know for sure. And also because, I mean, realistically, there was a town of 200 people, or Minneapolis, there's a lot more resources for people who are like 17 or 59 at that point. And it's late in the script, but I realized at this point in the script, I was writing it, that her mother and father were both 42 when they had Caroline, which is pretty impressive, right? It's like impressive now. But
yeah, that's impressive now, but I feel like even more so back then.
I mean, yeah, like that's good for you, like, you know, Caroline. That's strong. They lived in a house at 1022 Hawthorne Avenue in Minneapolis, which today is either a Fairfield Inn by Marriott or a parking lot. I couldn't tell. It doesn't exist, that address anymore. So, Gertrude went to school and then became a stenographer while living in Minneapolis. It was also around this time that she made her literary debut with a short story called The Curious Experience of Thomas Dunbar. It was published in the Argosy magazine in March of 1904 as G.M. Barrows. This would be the first and only time where she would use her name, albeit initializing her first and middle name, to be published. The Curious Experience of Thomas Dunbar, summarily, is about a man who is given a new element to hold called stellarite, and as he was holding it, performs a feat of supernatural strength that he claimed was super easy. Then his hands start to really hurt badly because of the element / metal he was holding on to. Somehow, it gets embedded within him, and because it's so new, nobody knows what the ramifications will be other than like him now being a human guinea pig. And that's basically how the story ends. This story came out around the same time as Marie Curie was studying radioactive materials and radiation for the very first time. And Bennett would have known and done some reading about these discoveries because, I mean, she was a person who was literate, and this was just like a crazy convenience. People of the who wrote back then and to this day, like in this kind of genre, do a lot of research before they write their stories, and they base it off of true facts. And this is where people believe where she got this story from. It's short, it's like a fun little story. I read it in 5 minutes. It's not anything. If you want to read it, everything is basically online.
Right.
Any questions about it?
So, some guy gets a radioactive piece of metal embedded in him. So does he become an alien?
Who knows? That's the premise of the story, though. Like, we have no clue.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and the story just ends like, well, now you're super strong, and I guess we'll see. Your hands don't really work, though.
Yeah.
Yep. Before we continue, I want to talk about the Argosy, the magazine that the majority of her work, or most of her work at least, a lot of it, not most, was published because it has a tidbit of publication history that's important. The Argosy started as a children's, mostly boys' weekly magazine, but in 1888, the editor expanded the audience for both men and boys for adventure stories, basically. By 1896, it had become a monthly, and in that year, the actual paper being used was transformed into cheap pulp paper found from like leftover pulp. Why am I drawing a blank on this in Maine?
When they're like getting the bark off of trees to make lumber?
The mills over there, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's like it was
Wow,
sifted out from transporting the logs, and that's what they used to make paper.
Yeah. This revolutionized publication and storytelling because now stories and literature can be mass-produced for very cheap. And even though many of the stories were of really low quality, kind of like the paper, which is where we get the name of the genre and stories we now call pulp fiction, many great authors were able to be published this way. The Argosy had a circulation of 500,000 by the time Bennett was published seriously and switched back to a weekly because of its popularity. The Argosy is the one who revolutionized pulp fiction eventually, right? It was also a long, like, thick magazine, dude. Like, you would get this weekly and it was hundreds of pages long, like, legitimately.
Out of all that paper?
Yeah. I mean, it was cheap paper.
Fascinating.
I mean, paper was cheap in America at one point. If it wasn't for pulp magazines like the Argosy, we would not really have like popular genres the way that we have them today, like science fiction and dark fantasy. Circulation plummeted for the Argosy in the 40s to only about 50,000 subscribers because of partially of the war, but also because of a failed attempt to start publishing mostly nonfiction. But then the Argosy peaked again in the 1950s with over 1 million subscribers, at which point they became only a men's magazine publishing men's adventure fiction, mostly, where the heroine, the hero, would save the heroine, sometimes from heroin itself. I assume, these stories were like, just those cheap adventure Bond things or something like that. It's an interesting bit of American history.
But a million subscribers at that point in time, I feel like that's a lot of people reading these stories.
Yeah, definitely. Again, this is like a thick ass book,
right?
And they weren't the ones who invented serialization of stuff, but a lot of these were like serialized novels where, you know how you get shows. You get an episode of a show,
yes,
and then like some shows like the Sopranos have a storyline.
It builds on that and it tells a story.
Exactly. So a lot of novels, that was how a lot of novels were created back in the day, which is basically how all of Barrows Bennett's novels were published at the time of her publishing. So,
Cool.
The Argosy eventually was sold a few times, and by 1978 it was stopped publishing regularly. I think there was a special publication as of like 2001. The significance of publication in history, its storytelling is definitely special, and you can find many of the issues online due to like the thankless work of archivists in America, I think, but all around the world, where you can get a lot of these issues. Not all of them, because a lot of them are lost to history. It's difficult to find a lot of her works in paperback because they really weren't published that way. Speaking of her work, after the publishing of her first short story, Gertrude took a long time away from writing. That's because she got married.
She's busy.
This is a man in her life, right? So there's absolutely no happy ending here.
Oh.
Except maybe for the ending that yummy just desserts for this dude, because he's a work of character. Before we go, though, do you have any questions about the Argosy or anything like that?
I don't think so. I have a pretty good understanding of that, I believe.
Cool. I think I'm pronouncing it right. The Argosy or Argosy. It's the Greek historians and nerds are going to go crazy because it's named after some sort of Greek titan. Gertrude M. Barrows married Charles Montgomery Stewart Bennett in 1908 or 1909. I think it's 1908. And again, there's several discrepancies of the dates because, of course, there are. Her husband went by Stewart Bennett mostly. And again, it's either Stewart as S-T-U-A-R-T or S-T-E-W-A-R-T. I've seen it spelled both ways. Stewart grew up in West Derby, Lancashire, England, and moved to the U.S. a motherfucking A sometime in the 1890s. At that point, he had met Gertrude. He had already been married twice, at a minimum. One of the people he married, he had a family with, and then just abandoned that family too, with multiple kids. He was, for my understanding, a journalist and someone who loved to explore the sea. Loved it.
Yeah, he's like a journalist, probably likes telling stories on his account, but also likes the ocean.
One of the sources claimed that he was a storyteller himself, and he also somehow met Barrows either from reading her story or through the publication phases. They got married probably in Atlantic City, probably in Philadelphia, not entirely sure. But if it's Atlantic City, then it's a truly bad omen, even though Atlantic City was completely not absolute shit like it is back then. It was kind of peaking. It's still Atlantic City. Trust me, I've been there. Then they moved to Philadelphia, and pretty much soon afterwards, she became pregnant. Happy, right? Pregnancy, expecting a kid. Sure.
We like that.
We do like that. We like a nice, happy family.
Yes.
That's not what's going to happen here.
Oh, man.
I presume, being the man he was, namely a British scoundrel, he went, ew, that's gross, and ditched her to marry another person named Mary Litton.
Kid. What was this other woman's name?
Mary Litton.
Okay.
This means that he was probably a bigamist because there are no records of him divorcing Gertrude whatsoever.
What a dog.
I know, he was such an asshole.
Jeez.
Stewart and his new wife fucked off to Florida, where they went exploring for gold, and I mean literally treasure hunting for gold. Like, that's what they did. That was like their hobby.
Is there any gold over there? I thought it was all in California. That's what the gold rush was.
Back in the day, there was even there's a whole history of people believing there's lost gold in the Caribbean because of the Spanish,
Yes.
the Spain. I mean, I didn't write this down because it happened not too long ago where they found a huge old ship full of gold. It was so full of gold that I can't remember if it was Colombia or Venezuela or Spain. Both their claims had 100% claim over it, and they would have easily doubled the money supply for their countries, meaning that they would tank the economy if both of them claimed and had all of it. It was just so much fucking gold, dude. Like, it was hard to fathom. I think there's still dispute to it to this day.
Right, because I think that treasure is like not been found.
No, it's been found. That's the thing. And the nations that are disputing over it, this happened, dude, I think it was like 10 to 15 years ago, are still fighting over it from my understanding, but like, I don't know. There has to be some sort of intelligent way of bringing it in because it would just destroy their money supply.
Maybe just sprinkle it in here and there, whoever got it.
Yeah, who knows, dude? It's crazy.
That's
so
insane.
like the idea that there's gold lost in the Caribbean, sure. Are you going to find it in 1910? I don't know. Again, like fucking, oh God, what was his name? L. Ron Hubbard, the guy who created Scientology, took a bunch of people on a boat in the Caribbean to search for gold. That's how he started Scientology and his cults, for lack of a better term. Sorry, Scientologists, sue me, I guess. But yeah, dude,
I've heard it's a cult.
I've heard it allegedly. Sorry, it's allegedly a cult.
Yeah.
They were exploring for gold. One day, actually, that day was Christmas in 1910. There was a wreck against either the West Jetty or the Northwest Jetty near Key West in Florida. Of the 6 people who were on the ship, 3 were rescued, 1 found salvation on an island, and 2 drowned. Stewart's body was recovered, dead. Mary's body, so his wife, never found. A little bit of just desserts for Stewart. I don't know how much Mary Latone knew about the wife, realistically.
Yeah. If she got involved with that guy, he probably swindled her into it, and she had no idea, but he got what he deserved. We don't know if Mary did.
Yeah, I don't know. Not much is known about Mary. All that's known is that originally people thought that Gertrude was the one who was dead because, I mean, that was her name. It was her last name.
Right.
She was
and
married
they
to
were
him.
married and no, they didn't get divorced, right?
Yep. So
no record, so.
Again, another thing
Fair to say.
About her life. Who the fuck knows, right? Like, but this one we know she lived. Our protagonist, now with a new last name, in a new city after moving to Philadelphia, and a new baby on the way, found a new job as a stenographer, and frankly, a really shit situation, right? Because as the 1910s came, she really didn't have time to write at this point, being a single mother and presumably on a low income. And then in the middle of the century that was going to happen, a global pandemic called the Spanish flu was hitting, Philadelphia pretty hard. It hit a lot of people, but Philadelphia was hard, and then it spread across the world, something we can't relate to at all because we've never heard of a global pandemic killing a bunch of people. No. Yeah.
I wonder what it's like.
I know, right? Well, I can't imagine being shut up for 3 to 4 to 6 months, constantly being asked to put on a mask, and people who say, no, I'm not going to do that, and then like going out and getting everybody else sick. Oof. No, I have no idea.
What the heck?
Then her mom got sick, actually. We don't know of what.
Oh.
Around the same time her mom got sick, and her mom would die in 1918, which was the end of the pandemic, really. She did start to begin writing. So remember that father that most likely moved to California to die of that old-timey lung disease?
Yes.
This is also maybe around the same time as he died, too. Maybe. Then again, who knows?
I love how loose it is.
I know, dude. It's kind of messy. A few sources said that Gertrude began writing to supplement her income to take care of her family and her ailing mother, which is like, that's one of the most dubious things I've ever read because, like, there's just so little cash to do that. And I mean, even though these type of pulp fiction magazines were giving out more money than you would expect, they weren't dishing out the kind of cash to supplement income, right?
No.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they had more ethical practices than streaming sources that rhyme with schmodify, who pay next to nothing to artists and that are really starving at this point and struggling. And then the CEO is now allegedly, or not allegedly, because he straight up said this, is investing in military AI technology to track down people who are using military things wrong or whatever, or enemies of the state, which is, not nefarious at all.
The
and
CEO Schmodify?
Of Schmodify, he took the wrong lessons learned from the Terminator series, right?
Oh,
It's happening. It's actually happening.
Freaky.
It's disgusting. But I digress, because I'm on Spotify. Well, excuse me. This is where the bulk of her work occurred, during the years of 1917 to 1920.
All right.
Yep. So this is kind of like Arthur Rimbaud, where like almost everything is shotgunned out at once, but different, right?
Yes.
Because she's like thinking her mid to late 30s too. So, any questions so far?
No, it's a pretty good like background of like life and everything going on and leading up to the point where you said the majority of her work begins. So it's like, that's awesome. I have a pretty clear picture, even though some of the resources you say are loose, but I kind of like that about it. Leaves some room for the imagination, if you will.
Her first publication after a long time was either a long short story or a serialized novella I've seen both, called The Nightmare. From here on end, Gertrude Barrows Bennett will publish under the name Frances Stevens. So if you find anything by Frances Stevens, it's the same person. Again, this is assumingly this, but she was writing the type of literature, and I think she knew this, that was really popular more in the male audience than a female audience at the time. And Gertrude changed her name probably because she thought that having a traditionally male name, and I know Frances is both female and male, but it's spelled with an IS, not the ES, which IS is more traditionally male, ES is traditionally female, right? This spelling would make her stories more marketable to the male audience, and male audiences would read them more, right?
Right.
It's a shitty thing, but it's something that literally occurs to this day. We covered this a little bit when we talked about J.K. Rowling on this thing, who, last I checked, is still being a despicable human being. This name change is also another reason why I think not a lot of people really know about her life, right? She was Frances Stevens in literature. She never claimed she really was. People just knew she was after some research. It really took a lot of effort for archivists to uncover who Gertrude Barrows Bennett really was, which is interesting.
It is.
The following year, she published her first novel, which is also a serialized, and this one was published by Famous Fantastic Mysteries, another pulp fiction magazine. This novel was called Citadel of Fear. I didn't read this one, but I found, I think, a good summary on Goodreads by some random dude named Brian Alexander, and I'm just going to quote him. Quote, Citadel of Fear is a fun pulp novel from 1918, an adventure based on Aztec mythology and Irish-American adventures. As a pulp, it has many scenes of action and high-pitched excitement, starting with the two main characters nearly dying in a Mexican desert. From there, we leap into a forgotten city of magic and or super science. Around one-third of the way in the book, the author suddenly yanks the action 1,000 miles away and years hence, setting up a domestic story with building menace. Then the finale ties most of it all together with a spectacular battle. Unquote. Just fun, right? Like it's just the kind of literature that you would read, or like fantasy things that you would read, like Star Trek, or not read, but watch in that way. Cool. A lot of people say it's her best. I can't claim one way or another.
It's pretty interesting, like Aztec mythology, and then with the Irish-American explorers.
Yeah, the Irish-American, I think, is because she's partially Irish-American, or was like part of the time. She really has a lot of Irish-American main characters from what I can find.
Yeah, what are those pale people doing down there,
Yeah, right?
You're going to get sunburn.
Noah MacGillivray, not Irish-American at all.
That last name's Scottish, but
Is
there's
it?
some Irish. Yeah, Mac.
M-A-C,
Scott.
not MC, okay.
Yeah, MC is Irish.
Excuse me. Not just completely wrong.
Yeah.
Can't believe it.
Can't believe it, dude.
I can't believe it. Ugh. I'm usually better at this. In the stories that...
That's why I'm here.
Put me in check.
Yeah, exactly.
So the stories in the books kept on coming, dude. The same year, she published this short story called Friend Island. So, island for friends, but Friend Island.
Ah, maybe that's how Love Island came to be a thing.
It's a short story. I read this one. It's set up as a frame story. So a story where somebody tells another story is a frame story, right? Where the world is female dominated, right? And this is kind of a fun part about it. So like you think about like the male centric world that we live in,
yes.
But like it's just implied, and then nobody says anything, but it's just a female dominated world, and you just have to you get the context from the literature, which is really fun actually. It's
that's an interesting take.
Yeah, no,
that she's like doing that at that time,
Yeah, and it's fun because, like, when you read about it, the narrative views the men as a weaker sex, and they use these stereotypes on men to, like, have that, like, as a weaker sex that, people back in the day saying that women were, and it's just, like, kind of interesting in that way.
And she's going by Frances at this point, too, yeah. So it's kind of it's an interesting take that...
And men are mostly reading it, too.
Right.
So, basically, The story and the plot is that a female sailor tells a story about how she got stranded on an island. She realizes that the island changes with the sailor's moods, right? So she continues to have a good time at times, and then when she's upset, the island changes all of a sudden. Like a volcanic eruption happens when she's angry.
I like that a lot.
It's very short. There was once a man on the island. She learned about him. The man returns, and then all hell breaks loose, basically. It definitely plays on the stereotypes in a fantastical way. And, like, she does this throughout, like, most of her literature, is that she's kind of, like, poking fun at stereotypes, from my understanding. And, like, it's not just, like, sexist stereotypes, but racial, like, stereotypes, ageism. It's interesting that she was being able to do that in a way that, like, would be...
Kind of questions them.
Yeah, exactly. Pokes fun
cool.
at them.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that a lot.
In 1918, she published a book called The Heads of Cerberus, which was, again, another Irish-American male as a main character, one of the main characters, who was a thief and a safecracker. There are other characters here, but, again, I just think it's interesting that she's picking out Irish-Americans, specifically at this time, and, like, all throughout her life. Irish-Americans were just coming in by the boatload, literally, into this country at this era. What is common in all of them is that all these characters, they all inhale this thing called the dusts of purgatory, partially by accidents, partially by intention, which I don't know if I've intentionally inhaled the dusts of purgatory before, but it sounds like it because they end up in a totalitarian future in Philadelphia, like 400 years in the future. So, like, I don't know. Maybe I've inhaled the dust of purgatory. It sounds like
maybe,
fun.
Yeah. It sounds like a wild ride. Jeez.
It's pretty typical of her writing, and I'm like 5 or 6 chapters in on this before I could even start getting involved with writing this. Yeah, just didn't have enough time. The last book we will mention today is a book called Claimed! This is one of probably the most accessible books, because it has gotten at least 5 reprints throughout the years. The overview, and I found this from Science Fiction Review's website, which was pulled back from a Wayback Machine, goes, quote, Claimed opens with the recovery of a mysterious artifact, a strange green box bearing an undecipherable inscription from an uncharted island following an undersea volcanic explosion that nearly dooms a ship that discovers it. Brought back to civilization, the box is purchased by a crotchety old millionaire who very quickly comes to regret it. Horrible apparitions of the sea appear at night, and frightening dreams plague the old man, as well as his niece and the noble young doctor who's serving him. While the doctor does what he can to learn of the box's origin and the meaning of the strange writing, which always appears on the bottom of the box no matter how you set it down, the non-stop macabre visions and occasional deaths that have appeared in the box's wake eventually lead to the abduction of the old man and his niece by persons unknown. In pursuit of this employer across the high seas, the doctor learns that the box's evil's origins are from a mad sailor who originally sold it to them. End quote.
Magic box.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like, interesting magical objects in her shit, too, right?
Well, it's fantasy, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, you gotta have some weird magical objects.
Yeah, like I said, if you're going to find one of her works, it's probably this one at this point. Shortly after Claimed was published in 1920, Gertrude Barrows Bennett, a.k.a. Frances Stevens, stopped writing pretty much altogether. She never publishes anything pretty much after that.
Wow.
Now, again, it's not really known why. She would have been around 37 at this point, which wouldn't even be the peak of most like authors' writing careers. Like you're getting to that point,
right?
But like a lot of authors like really start peaking in their 50s. Now, maybe it was due to her mother's death, but I doubt that because her mother died a couple years before. Maybe she found a new job with the responsibility of that job and raising a kid all by herself. Really, there's not much to know because we have to jump 10 years here, right? Do you have any questions at the point with her books or anything?
No, the book that stood out to me the most was the short story about the island. Yeah, that changes with your mood. Like, that's such an interesting, like, story, I think, because, you know, everyone has moods, and it's like the weather is dependent on your mood. Like, wouldn't you want it to be like warm and sunny all day? Probably, but
Definitely. And like I could send you that because that one was easy to find. That's on progeandgutenberg.com.
Oh, yeah, I'm familiar with that website. No, I'm not.
Yeah, that was a really, really easy one. I was like, fine, Friend Island, that sounds friendly, right?
Yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm. Again, we're jumping 10 years in our life, and like not much to know, really. Until one day in 1930, she met Carl Franklin Gaster, who was also a bit of a scoundrel. Except he was an American, so we're just going to call him a shithead. What's known is that before he met Gertrude, he was married at least twice, probably 3 times. And we don't know if he was married, if he met Gertrude or not. He also got arrested for public drunkenness several times.
Oh, wow.
One time, there was an added larceny charge to the public drunkenness when he stole a bunch of bedding from a hotel he was staying at.
Huh.
Up in Bellingham, Washington, though he probably lived in like around the San Francisco Bay Area all his life. That's Northern California. So Gaster took a series of odd jobs throughout his life and finally ended up as a merchant marine. This is where
Cool.
Terrence Hanley, the blog biographer that we're really getting a lot of this from, writes in a rather blunt and straightforward way of what happens next, right? Quote, on March 27th, 1930, Gaster was enumerated in the U.S. Census of Merchant Marine Seamen. He was occupied as a 4th assistant engineer, and he was based out of Bayonne, New Jersey. His unnamed wife was in Merced, California at the time, so he was married. 12 days later, on April 8th, 1930, Gertrude Barrows Bennett, widowed, was enumerated in Mill Valley, California, where she was working as a trucking company, something for there as a stenographer probably. So it looks like the two had not yet married at the time, unquote. She moved over there. My guess, and this is a total wild guess and probably not true, they met in New Jersey or Philadelphia, and she came back with him.
I mean, that's probably fair. It's a fair guesstimation.
One source says that Gertrude dropped off her daughter Constance off to a house before she booked it to California, but that wouldn't make any sense because Constance, her daughter, was already 23 at the time. It is also believed that the daughter had already been married at this point. She was definitely married, right? But at this point, when she left, she probably was. And Gertrude, not having any more responsibility, booked it from her old life, and she basically never looked back, dude. Like she never looked back.
Start fresh, sure.
Yeah.
Kids on your way, why not start anew?
Yeah, we're going to talk about Constance one more time, but Constance lived a long life. She lived until 2001. So like within our lifetimes.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. She probably saw the towers fall and was like, all right, that's enough.
Oh, God.
Time to go.
Okay, by 1933, the two, Gertrude and Gaster, were almost certainly married because they were living together in San Francisco. Gertrude was 50, Carl was 41, so cougar alert. This was Carl's 4th wife. I know this is a rather open-ending and very undramatic, but that's basically all we know for the rest of her life, right? Gaster would travel for work, doing odd jobs, mostly on boats and such. Gertrude stayed in California. For many years, people thought she died in 1939 because a letter that her daughter sent her was returned unread. However, it is known that she has died eventually in February 2nd, 1948, around the age of 64 or 65. I don't have a cause of death. I have no clue. She did move around a lot in California, so that's probably why the letter was returned to sender unread.
Right.
Because from my personal experience, forwarding from the post office is a pain in the fucking ass, dude.
Even now.
Yeah, to this day. She cut all ties, either inadvertently or purposely, from her former life, right? At the age of 50. I mean, like, she had a tough life. Like,
yeah, sure. Interesting she didn't want to stay in touch with her daughter, though, or, like, felt the need to or whatever.
I mean, you know, like, I think it's inadvertent more than anything like that.
Right. Probably not. Probably wasn't out of spite or anything.
No, I mean.
Interesting.
It's one of those things where, like, you know, she just needed something else. Her daughter was in good hands, it seemed like, right?
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah.
She could move on.
Gertrude Barrows Bennett is still credited for creating the dark fantasy genre. There have been claims that she directly influenced people like H.P. Lovecraft in his work. And like H.P. Lovecraft is the guy who invented Cthulhu. Though that probably didn't happen, even though there's some claims that he praised her work and wrote about her, how she influenced him. The statements have not ever been verified, and we can almost assume that it probably didn't happen. So those statements, if that's the case, if it didn't happen, then all likelihood the dark fantasy genre would have eventually been created, probably by H.P. Lovecraft himself, and in all likelihood, it was only a few years after Bennett's writing. But that doesn't take away from her achievement at all, right? Like that, and I'm not trying to be cynical here. I just believe that Bennett probably didn't have any influence on the life because she wrote in a few minor magazines, realistically.
Maybe open the door, right?
Yeah.
Open the door for somebody else to walk into the room and be like, whoa.
I mean, there's a chance. There is a distinct chance because the timeline makes sense.
Right.
Even to this day, Bennett's work is hardly known. It didn't really gain much in popularity after she passed away either. It's really not popular today. Like, I could not find any of her work easily online for sale, like except for claims as a book form. So that's the book form. We've touched upon a few reasons why she wasn't really well known in her history, but another reasons are like changing her name for publication purposes. Her constant moving around and disappearing basically after 1930, her stopping publishing altogether in 1920, even the lack of saved documents and inaccurate archiving in census, right? And frankly, pulp fiction is cheap, right? The pulp magazines, though they're fun to read, they deteriorate. Like, they're not easy to find. Magazines that were printed 100 years ago anymore.
Right.
I have books that are older than that, like personally.
A magazine that's made out of like very, very cheap paper.
It's not to discourage readers from reading her work. Overall, she wrote and published 5 novels and 8 short stories. And basically all her pieces can be found online, save for a few, right? I wasn't able to find like a couple. I mean, they're in varying forums. A lot of them are like copyrighted not copyrighted, but like basically somebody put it to the copier face down, and that's how you can write it. So read it. It's not the most pleasant reading experience in my view. What I want to do is give a big shout out to end this to the void that is the internet, to all the archivists uploading these pulp fiction magazines for posterity's sake. It's a tough task, but it's useful. I found your work, like the work you did there.
Right, this wouldn't be possible without you guys. The void.
Even if like we have no actual clue, like what I just said is true. I have no fucking clue.
I think I find that very like fitting how her life's like a mystery. Yeah. And like kind of maybe created dark fantasy, but not. It's like very fitting that it's like kind of mysterious in a way.
Anything else you want to add before I do the few sources and then a plug and then like close up for the day?
Well, thanks for having me back on. It's always a pleasure. It's an experience and a journey. So thank you for having me back on. Appreciate it.
I figured you'd like this one because this one was weird. So
weird, and I like that.
So Tellers of Weird Tales blog. It's written by Terrence E. Hanley. The 7-parter on there, where a lot of this comes from, and good work on that, buddy. Pulpmagazine.org, Pulp Magazine Project, with the description of the Argosy magazine. I did the University of Pennsylvania's free access to the Argosy, as well as Ohio State's free access to the Argosy. Project Gutenberg and Project Gutenberg Australia, which are 2 different sites, apparently. Brian Alexander's comment on Goodreads. I did some science fiction reviews.net. Also, The Influential Pulp Career of Francis Stevens by Andrew Liptka on kirkreviews.org. The woman who invented dark fantasy, how Gertrude Barrows Bennett popularized the fantastic by Lisa Jacek. It's Jacek in Polish, so it's Jacek in English on LitHub. You're probably English. And I read the Wikipedia sites, but it really wasn't helpful. My Patreon's Lost in the Library podcast on Patreon. Also, any questions, please send them Lost in the Library podcast and Gmail. Follow us on Instagram, Lost in the Library there. I have a Substack. That's my name, Fil Deptula. Everything's always under development, buddy. Any questions? This was actually just as long as the Rimbaud episode, which is interesting because it's like 3 pages shorter.
Huh. Yeah. How much time do you put into researching and like writing the script, like ballpark?
It's a good it really depends on the script. This one was actually shorter because I'm like, all right, I don't have to verify shit.
Yeah, this is probably a good one for you then.
This one took
Boom,
like
bada bing.
4 to 6 hours to write, probably. Yeah.
Now, another question before we go. Are you researching multiple things at once, or do you kind of go like one person topic at a time?
I like to do one, but no, I do multiple at once, and like it's only because I get distracted. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I wrote another script for like a week and a half ago, and like the person I couldn't do it with, I wanted to do it with somebody, but she just couldn't at the time. She even though like we were hanging out, like it just didn't make sense due to family life. So, yeah, things are just tough, and like I'm trying to do this weekly, but I'm gonna have to take breaks. I just don't have the time, dude.
Take your breaks.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their stuff, and you have important stuff.
Until I'm getting paid for this fully, like I'm gonna
have fun.
Go
at your own pace. Have fun.
All right, dude. Thanks.
Thanks.